I've got a confession to make.
I need to get this off my chest. As a business owner, we all make mistakes.
I've got to confess.
Hey guys, it's Charlie from Confessions of a Business Owner here, and today I'm bringing you a very special episode with a dear friend and very, very clever person in business, Mr. Paul Higgins. How you doing, Paul?
Great, Charlie. Great to be here.
Yeah, I'm thrilled to have you on the show. I mean, our networks have crossed paths many, many a times, and overwhelmingly, especially from a good friend of mine, Grant, he often refers to you as one of the smartest people he knows in business. So it's quite exciting to have you on the show, in all honesty.
Yeah, I think he's just got to get out more.
That'll keep paying him.
One of the two.
No, he definitely refers to you very highly, and that's not short across the networks at all. Now, what we'll quickly get into here is I would love for you to share a little bit about your business, Build, Live, Give. So can you tell the audience what it's all about?
Yeah, look, Build, Live, Give is a community for people that have escaped corporate to run their own business. And what we're all looking to find is both lifestyle and financial freedom. So really, it's been back engineered for my journey. I left back in 2011, found it very difficult to find my tribe to get things to work. And I've just sort of back engineered what I would have told myself and then help other people to get there just quicker than what they would by themselves.
Oh, it's a fun topic. I think everyone remembers when they make the jump. Like no one, in my experience, and I could be wrong, there might be a few, some people maybe who have parents as business owners just go straight into being business owners or that type of life. But in general, I would say that like 95% of the people I know, it's like at some point had to make this jump. And it's a very, very testing and interesting time in this, I suppose, in our lives when we do this. And I certainly, and I wonder if you did too, made a ton of mistakes here. I really, really did.
Definitely, and still making them, until this day. But look, it is true. And corporate life is brilliant. And I was lucky to work for a really good company, global leader, a lot of development, and it was brilliant. But it just didn't fully prepare me for my own business. And even though our clients within corporate were mainly small businesses, there was nothing like actually running your own small business. And they're both enjoyable. I love both of my lives, so to speak. It's sort of been a sliding door moment for me, but I certainly wouldn't go back to corporate. And I absolutely love running my own business, the freedom that provides me, and also the joy that I see in other people that have left when there's, I asked someone the other day, what's been your biggest success since you've left corporate? And they said, to be honest, Paul, I've just become a better human, become a better dad, and a better husband. And you could just see the joy, their joy in their face. And I'm like, that's what we're striving for. It wasn't the fact that he got another promotion or beat someone to a job or ripped off some supplier or whatever it is that he may have said that he did in corporate life. So they're the sort of joy in the moments that are really true to me.
Isn't it fascinating though? What I find most interesting in a lot of people that have come from corporate is it's not often they hate their jobs. It's like a lot of people have actually said, well, if you're going to be in corporate, it's probably a really good job and did enjoy it to some degree, but it's the fulfillment piece.
Look, it is. And I think it depends where you are as well. I think, when you're more of a technical person, I think you can really love that. And then all of a sudden you become more of a leader. So that gives some challenges. And then unfortunately at the pointy end, you sort of start to hit that politics. And, it really becomes a choice. Look, some people can do it. I must admit, I was okay at it, but trying to balance both your personal and a full-time corporate role, especially the amount of travel that a lot of people in corporate do. I know I used to fly all the time. I think that becomes difficult, and then that eats into your health, and it just sort of comes a bit of a cascade. So I think some people absolutely love it. I didn't love it for the travel or for the perks or for those reasons. What I loved was for the learning, and it got to a certain point where the learning wasn't increasing at the pace that I was actually letting my family down. So for me, it was like, well, you just got to balance the ledger here.
It's a really interesting. You brought up a word that goes, I suppose, massively correlated with corporate, especially bigger corporates, is politics. And I think that certainly frustrates a lot of people because that's not actually part of the role. Well, I mean, it kind of is in a lot of cases, but that's not what we sign up for. Like we often want to be in the good part of the job. That's in many cases an unnecessary part. Do you find politics is a big thing you hear about from your side of things? A lot of people coming to you?
Yeah, definitely. And I think often it's when, well, my father used to say, every corporate person's got a number and it's just which day that number comes up. And I remember him saying that to me about 2 years before my number came up. And I think, these days, things are really difficult. A lot of businesses are struggling to make their profit. The pressure that puts on, then people behave badly to get a result, and that will often lead to politics or bad decisions or decisions that they wouldn't do in their personal life that they do in their corporate. So they're great people, nothing wrong with that, but just the circumstances make it difficult. And politics I think is very difficult. A lot of people leave because of that, whether they've been retrenched, whether they've had a boss that they just can no longer stand. But the flip side is, I think, in small business, we're so inclusive. I'm just amazed that the world's so big. There's so many clients that, from a very far distance, you could say, well, hang on, Charlie and Paul, aren't you competitors? Like, aren't you in the same industry? Aren't you doing a similar thing? But no, it's not the case. Like, you're willing to help me, I'm willing to help you. It's just a lot more collegial and a lot more people really going over and above to help you. Whereas in corporate, typically there's 1 or 2 jobs and there's 10 people going for it. And, sadly, the person that plays the politics often gets the job, not necessarily the best person.
That's fascinating perspective on things there, because you're absolutely right. It's overwhelming how well our perceived competitors in small business are actually like my friends. Like, it's really interesting that collaboration and abundance really does seem to exist where it's not really seen like that. But I can totally get it in the corporate side of things. It's like, well, 10 people, 2 jobs, people are missing out. That's the reality of it.
Yeah, and I think, if you look at Facebook, Google, there's a lot of platforms out there where we all play on the same platform and we all play well, and it's a great infrastructure. Whereas you look at corporate, often they'll build silos. So, I was in the soft drink industry. There's way too much stainless steel, as we used to call it. There's too many can and bottle machines in Australia. But because, it'd make sense that you just brought all that industry together. You do the marketing, we'll all share the back end and we'll all save a lot of money and be able to make better products. But because of the competitiveness, they just don't do that. Whereas if you look at the infrastructure that we use as small businesses, we're all leveraging off the same infrastructure, which I think is very different to what often happens in corporate.
I think that's one of the reasons small business succeeds, in all honesty, is like there is definitely advantages to being small, and there's things that a small business or a medium business can do that large corporates just would never work in their balance sheet. So a fascinating perspective. Now, one of the reasons I brought you on the show today is definitely for your confession,
Yes.
which I know you're going to be talking about your effective jump into business world. So what I'd love you to do at the moment is like take us on that journey. This is your time to confess and take us through what it was like for Paul.
Yeah, so I'll take you to the circumstance first. So I'd been offered a job 1 week, and it was a job that I didn't really want to do, but our group managing director said, look, I really want you to do this job, so that's great. So I took the job, and then the next day they basically said, no, look, sorry, we're going to now retract our offer. So you're not going to have that, and you're going to have to go and, we're going to pitch to the market. And you've got a choice. You can either go for that job or just sit in another job for a couple of years and, wait till something else comes up. And, I had some health issues at the time, and I went up to my father's farm in the country and we were picking olives. And if anyone's ever done it, listening now, it's incredibly boring, but it's back to nature, sitting there. My dad worked for the company for 25 years, so he knew a lot of the people involved, and he knew a lot about the company. And I said, look, Dad, I'm just so unhappy. I've been offered this. It's been retracted. Now I've got to go through a process. I just don't like corporate In particular, I don't like the company that I'm working for anymore. They've burnt trust. And that's when he said, well, look, every day, every person has their number. Yours has come up. You've got, let's work out what you're going to do. So over the case of 4 days, we basically just worked through all the options. And to be honest, at the end of those 4 days, and incredibly physically draining from picking all those olives, I just thought, I don't know what I want to do, but I know one thing: I'm not the person that I want to be within this role and within this company. And I can only blame myself for that, no one else. So I can sit there and whinge and complain and blame everyone else, but ultimately it's my choice and I need to make that decision. So I went back the next day, resigned, and then sort of went on a bit of a journey of things to do to try to, balance both my lifestyle but also my finances.
Well, I love that you took so much personal ownership. Something I don't think enough people do, in all honesty, and I think it's a sign of a good business owner, in all honesty. If you're in a corporate at the moment and you enjoy blaming other people or circumstances, I think you really got to struggle if you ever come into business world. So that type of personal ownership is a strong characteristic, and I think it's probably served you very well. So what happened next?
Yeah, so I went and did some coaching, and I was mainly coaching people within corporate. And it was great. I did my qualifications at the Institute of Coaching, Executive Coaching and Leadership. That was all great. But what I realised, to be a true coach, you've got to just stay still in the moment, get all the answers from, or let someone else come up with the answers, and you just use questions to show them a different perspective, which is all fine. But for me, I just wasn't patient enough. I actually had a lot of experience. I wanted to share my experience. And I just realised that coaching wasn't for me, and also corporate wasn't for me. I thought there's a reason why those people are unhappy. I don't necessarily think I can solve it. So unless I can solve something, I don't think I should be practicing it. So I basically said that's enough. So then I started advising small business owners and went down that path. And that was great because there's some things that the Coke company did exceptionally well, and some of the big clients that we used to work with, small businesses that were, franchises around the world I worked with. So I had a lot of experience, and that went really well, which then led to creating an outsourcing business over in the Philippines, and also a software development business. So it sort of, went down a path for 3 or 4 years. And I was enjoying it, but I must admit I was struggling still financially to make the money that I did in corporate.
And that's a big thing, I feel, for a lot of people in corporate. I think the lure of corporate in a lot of ways is certainly the income that can come with it, and putting that off, or I suppose recreating that in small business, can certainly take some time. But I like your path so far. I'm heavily biased because I do have an outsourcing company.
Yes.
But I like your choices.
Yeah, and look, there's 2 key things that I was seeing in small business owners. One is they didn't necessarily have the technology that they needed. So we created a company to help solve that. And then the second thing was around the people. So the great thing at Coca-Cola is, you had resources. Anything that you needed, you could get. And I found with small businesses, and especially myself, I was just doing everything myself, and I was really struggling to let go and get above the weeds. And that's when I found I tried one VA company in the Philippines, and that worked okay. And then I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, why don't I do it myself? So that's when I went and created my own company in that space. So the 2 of them, including the advisory, really helped people to scale their business.
Oh, fantastic. And are you still doing those today?
No, look, we still do the software. So we've still got a business called Scale My Empire that helps with the software piece. But the outsourcing piece, we've now let other partners do that. And the key driver for that was my health. I couldn't really travel anymore. And I just, I think it's really important to go over to the Philippines. I've been about 20 times, but my specialist advised me that that wasn't a good thing to do, travel anywhere, let alone the Philippines. I've got the rarest blood type in the world. If something happens to me, it's going to be very difficult to get my type of blood there. So I thought, well, if I can't go and be with my team enough, I don't think I should be running it. So that's when I sold it off, and now use companies like yours and others to refer people And I suppose I've become a little bit more agnostic, not just having my own service.
Yeah, good to hear. And I think you highlighted something really interesting is like your experience in corporate where you had resources and then coming over to small business where that can be more challenging because often at times we don't necessarily have the cash or the people or the know-how or the access to those resources like you did once upon a time. So I really like you've kind of scratched this from your own itch and seeing that gap. What happened next in the story?
Yeah, so then came July 2016. I sold off the VA business. A business partner, I became more of a silent business in the technology. And then there was a bit of a void. I took my family overseas for 2 months, which was great in preparation of a major operation. And I thought, well, what am I going to do? And that's when I decided to create a mastermind. I'd actually been in a mastermind for around 6 months, and I got a lot of value from that. I think you're in the same mastermind, Charlie, in James's Silver Circle. He was great, showed me a model, and I thought, well, the model's great, but I'd just like to create it for people like me that have had my experience from corporate that are running their own business. So we launched that in July 2016, and that's been going strong ever since.
Fantastic. And yes, I am in that same mastermind. And I agree, James is an absolute weapon. He's been instrumentally helpful to me over that time. And the same for you, which is just brilliant. But I love you've kind of made a pivot to really help those people again that came from, you're scratching your own itch again. It's like you want to prevent people from having the pain that you've had to encounter along the journey. And how's the experience been since doing that?
Yeah, look, it's been good. I still I wouldn't say that it's, exactly where I'd want it to be. And I think that's just a part of running your own business. You'd always like it to be a bit better. But I sort of, back engineered 5 key things that I help people with. And I wish someone had have helped me. And the first one is just, personal productivity. So I think the right technology, getting a VA is essential. I think if you're a small business owner and you haven't got a VA, you're sort of leaving an opportunity on the table. The second is the ideal client. So I think when I became really specific around who I was targeting, and also when I see my community members do the same thing, that makes a real difference rather than being all things to all people. Then there's the business model and getting some of the things that James has no doubt taught you. He taught me around recurring revenue models and around the right pricing, etc. I think that's really important. The fourth one is around sales focus. And I think for me, I just spent so much time having conversations that were never going to lead anywhere. So just thinking that everyone was a client and that, having a coffee with someone would, just ultimately turn into results, and realizing that there's only probably about 5% of people that are really ready to make that decision, and just investing time on those 5% is of value, and also having really good assets to help people like, know, and trust you along on the way, which, you've got a brilliant podcast and, I've got the same. And then the last one is that high performing team. So in particular, working with suppliers, I got burnt so many times picking the wrong suppliers. I, had one guy, online course, 15,000 US down the Google, and never saw the light of the day. And that really set me back a huge way, because that's money I could have invested in marketing or hiring good people. So, we've got over 160 vetted suppliers now. When someone says, hey, look, I need a web developer, I need a designer, I need a virtual assistant, I can say, well, look, here's 3 or 4 companies that our members have used, that they're trusted, we know they'll deliver, and therefore that's mitigating the risk for you, because really time's the greatest thing that you've got as your own business owner. And picking the wrong supplier can cost you 3-6 months time, plus the opportunity cost of the revenue. It can be really debilitating. That's the word I was after.
You have done your research. I listened to those 5 things and I'm like, yep, that's the mistakes of my first year or so, at least, and probably still today.
Yeah,
Very well.
It's just practical. In all honesty, I just back engineered. One day I just went away and just thought, what are all the things, if I was telling myself now and I was just about to leave corporate, what would I have done differently? And those were the 5 key things. And now when I'm working with people and we get those 5 things right quicker, they're smart, they would have got there, probably like me, but why take 5 if you can take 2? And each time I used to say to my wife, look, sorry, we can't have that holiday this year, or no, look, things are a bit tight. I can't pay you that salary this month, but, I'll pay double next month, knowing that, I'd struggle to even pay the next month. All of those painful conversations, or your kids looking at you saying, well, hang on, Dad, all my friends who, are still in corporate, they're off doing this, they're off doing that, and we're not doing that anymore. It just avoids all of those conversations. And the flip side is that now, whenever my kids pick up the phone and they're at school, they're sick, or if they need me to do something or whatever, I'm always there for them. And, it's funny, my wife used to say the kids had walked past me and asked a question to my wife all the time. So, her name's Linda. Linda, what, Mum, what should I do here? What should I do there? And it was like I didn't exist. I was, not there. I was just a body. And now it's nice to know that it's not, it's not 50-50, but it's getting close. Well, they'll actually come up and ask me my opinion and ask me advice. And I'm there and I'm actually part of the family. Whereas if I was on a plane, flying around all the time, what right did I have to really know my kids well? I just couldn't.
Well, I think that's a big driving force for many of us, myself included. Like, the reason I got into business is pretty much exactly what you just said. I quickly realized, full disclosure, I don't have kids yet. One day, hopefully next year. We'll get to that.
Great.
First announced on this podcast. But the point being is, like, when I was in a working environment, which I came from the trade, not from corporate, but it's like I quickly realized it's like, well, my kids are going to be lucky to know my name if I'm going to be able to provide for my family and achieve an income that's going to support a lifestyle in Australia. And it's like, that didn't sit well with me at all. Like, that really didn't. And I think, wanting to be involved in my children's lives, it kind of lit the fire in me to make the jump. Like, I think that was the underlying pin that said, well, this is what is the directed path. And I'm thrilled to hear that you've been able to get that, Paul, because you're never going to get that time back.
No, and I think there's a balance. So, look, there's no exact right or wrong. I'm certainly not saying that. But I think for me, I really love the balance of working for one of the best companies in the world, getting, to travel overseas, work with really smart people, launching products where, you have still an impact. Every time I go into a supermarket and I see cold drinks at the checkout, that was something I invented globally, which, sort of lives on. So you get those things. But
That's
then
awesome.
You get the flip side, which is, now you can spend a lot of time changing people's lives. You can spend more time with the people that you really love. And, it's great. So I think we're blessed. And if, I think technology these days allows this to happen, where I rarely leave my house, but I can talk to smart people like you all around the world at any time. And I think that is the modern world. And I just think if you're still in an old school company that says you've got to fly around, you can't actually, video conference, or you've got to do things that you've got to work 5 days, 9 to 5, or, most cases 6 to 8, or whatever the work hours are. I just think, have a think about the other options that are out there, because it is brilliant. And having a flexible life where you're in control and you can still do all your learning, you can still have great relationships, you can still, do things that you would never be able to do, like still travel overseas, but this time it's with the family. It's with the people you love, rather than some boss that's, being an a-hole most of the time, and, you don't like spending time with him when you're forced to go away with him for 2 weeks, as an example.
It's such an interesting, I'm thrilled to be alive at this time when this type of change is possible. And the technology, as you've mentioned, where it's like, even this morning I had a conference call with people in the Philippines or the US, and it blows my mind that we can do it in instantaneous real time, which is just crazy. But what a great story. And I'm really, really thrilled. And I think I'm even more blown away by your research and 5 steps. I'm like, totally, those 5 areas are absolutely crucial to the starting point. But I wanted to ask some different questions now, because
Yeah, sure.
I feel like you've had a really good view that I think many people wouldn't have. What, in your experience, and I realize this will be an opinion, what is the biggest mistake people make when leaving their job and venturing into a small business?
I think the biggest thing they make is that they do it by themselves. That they think just because I've been successful in corporate, I can successfully do it myself. So when people provide or offer them help or support, they say, no, look, it's going to be okay. I'll do it myself. And particularly males that are used to in corporate, being in really difficult circumstances and normally not enjoying their job, but they can't tell anyone. And normally if they're senior, like I was, you had to be put on that brave face, so to speak. But I think once you leave and you're in your own business, actually people are there to help you and open up and get some help from people that have gone before you. I think that's the most successful ingredient, because you are smart, you will get there at some point, but you might as well do it a lot quicker than you plan.
I'll agree with that. And first off, I'll put my hand off and say that was absolutely me. I thought because I was good at what I did previously that I would naturally be good at this. And I think for the first 12 months at least, I shut the door on external help, thinking that I would be able to work it out, because that's how I'd always operated in the world. Definitely cost me a lot of time and progress. So I really like that answer. I really, really do. On the people that you've seen make the jump and succeed quickly, is there any common characteristic or focus point without your influence, I should say?
Sure.
Given them this, they've cheated.
Yeah, well, I think the other thing is that you've got to leave perfection at the door. So certainly in corporate, it's often around the perfection. So, certainly in the Coke company, they had incredibly high standards. And if you didn't have all the research, if you didn't have all the facts to back it up, you didn't sort of make a decision. Whereas in small business, you've got to make more intuitive calls and you've got to take more risks. And I always say, progress rather than perfection. And it took me a long time to get that. But if you can get there quickly and let things go. So that's definitely one thing. The other thing is rejection. The sooner you get comfortable with the fact that it's not about you, because you own your business, it becomes very personal. And then you get so attached to it. When someone says no to you, you actually take it personally and you think that they're saying no to you. But they're not. They're just saying no to the fact that your solution will not get them to where they need to be quicker than someone else's, as an example. So I think get used to rejection, get used to people saying no to you, and don't stop calling. Continue to follow up, continue to call. I know a lot of people avoid sales, so to speak, and then they worry about, and then it becomes the fact that they don't have money to invest in marketing and a team, and all of a sudden it becomes a job that's not paying well rather than a business. So I think that's the second thing I really get people to focus on, is just accepting not everyone is going to say yes.
Isn't it fascinating? Because even in you saying that, I can quickly recognize people where that thing's exactly happened. A few people have said no to them in the beginning, and then they've gone into their shell a little bit and not sold, and then stayed stuck. They really have, and they end up with what I call a zombie business. Mm-hmm. It's just like a poor paying job where it's like they make enough where they stay in business, but not enough where they ever get to do any of the fun stuff, in my opinion. So eventually they end up looking a bit half dead. But fascinating insight. I thoroughly agree with that. I tell you what, Grant's holding up his end of the bargain here. I'll have to make sure I tell him it's very insightful, these perspectives and things. And if you'd asked me these questions before this interview, I wouldn't have had answers as clear, even though I can see myself in all the answers you've put forward. So I love you've really been able to break this down well. Okay, so if someone was to leave their job then, and we've seen some of these points on both sides, they've done really well. Along the journey, what can people do to increase their chance of success from your point of view?
Yeah, look, I think the key thing, and this is not rocket science, but really focus on what they're good at, and then effectively get others to help them where they're not. So I'll give you, from a confession point of view, I'll give you my confession on this. I am not great at a small business marketer. It's not something that I'm fantastic at. Yes, I was marketing manager at Coca-Cola, but very different. So, we had big budgets, we did lots of research, very different. But getting the right language and Facebook ads and that stuff, I find really difficult to get my head around that. And for so long, I tried to train myself, and I either didn't train myself or I didn't do it, which, basically stopped some of my growth, where I should have just gone and got someone else to do that. And I kept the things that I was really good at and then get other people to fill the other gaps. So if you're listening right now and you're really struggling to sort of break to the next level, I'd really look at what do you love doing? What are you really good at? What do you get when people go, oh, that's a fantastic comment, or that's a great idea? You know intuitively when you're really good at something. Stick to that and then get others to support you in the areas that you're not as strong in. Don't try to be all things to all people. It just won't succeed.
It's true at all levels and degrees. I really, really feel I like that as well. It's quite interesting because there's one of two camps. There's the camp of, in my opinion, I'll say this as opinion, I'll preface this. But
Yes.
it's like there's two camps. There's people that come across that are really good at what they do and not so good at marketing and sales. And like that's the area where they have to put the most work in. And then on the reverse is you get people that are really good at marketing and sales, but then struggle to deliver good products because they're so into their marketing and sales. So it's like you always need to like leverage into one of them, whether it's bringing people on board to deliver well or bringing people on board to market well, so to speak. Do you find the same?
Yeah, look, I do. And often that's where partners work really well. So if I look at Scale My Empire as a business with Scott and I, I'm very much more the salesperson and I love to do that. And Scott's very much more the technical person and is brilliant at coming up with ideas. Now, as a team, we work much better in that way than if he had to do that, do both roles, and conversely, if I had to do them. And that's when we met, we were both trying to do the other person's job. And when we joined together, it became a lot easier.
I really like that and a great example. Now, we're coming to the end of our interview here. Now, I want to make sure people have a way to come and connect and see more about what you're doing, Paul, because I think it serves their education very, very well. Where's the best place for people to come and see more from you?
Yeah, so you can go to the website, which is buildlivegive.com. So we've got a great quiz there that people can go to. It's a free quiz and it really helps you answer some of those key questions